wise leader? Of course, first thing which I got is, do I have to be a CEO to benefit from this book? No, it is just that when you look at top leaders, when you look at role models, you hear the names of CEOs a lot more than lower level people. So I thought if we can give some examples and best practices of senior leaders, that's what it is, can be benefiting to, what you call a student, or if I'm a stay-at-home mom, or if I'm a soccer dad, it doesn't matter. This actually is applicable in that respect. Do I have to be of a certain age to be wise? What I found is, there is an assumption that wisdom comes with age. What I have found in past 22 years of research is, wisdom comes with a package. Actually, wisdom is the birthright for us. But somewhere along the path, through education, through conditioning, through family context, social context, we beat the wisdom out of us. Because we focus on security, we focus on certain, conforming to certain norms, we condition people in particular ways of doing. In that process, the wisdom of discernment seems to be one of the early victims. And do I have to give up my smartness to be wise? That's another common question which I'm getting. I'm finding it is about moving between the two extremes. Wisdom is to know, it's like if I'm a servant leader, do I have to be always a servant? No, as a servant leader, if you need to go to the front, you need to take on and do the command and control. That is still in the mode of servant leadership. But that many people don't look at it. So it is important to recognize it is contextual sensitivity, doing what needs to be done, learning when to hold and when to let go. And these are some of the characteristics of wise leadership. So in that respect, smartness and wisdom can coexist. And last thing is, do wise leaders always stay wise? Not always. I find today's wise leader could be tomorrow's otherwise leader. So that means wisdom is not a place to come to, wisdom is a place to come from. When I can come from a place of wisdom, then I can make mistakes and learn from them. Then I become resilient, then I become flexible, then I become adaptable. But if I have a fixed mindset that I'm intelligent or I'm not, or I'm wise or I'm not, then, like the opposite of wisdom is actually foolishness. So till I am able to understand my foolishness that drives my life majority of the time, I will not be able to appreciate wisdom that also comes in between my two states of foolishness. I completely agree that the context sensitivity, flexibility and resilience, that means learning from the failure and recognizing wisdom happens in the moment, on the ground, in a pragmatic way. Wisdom is not an intellectual concept. Wisdom is not a cognitive frame of mind. Wisdom requires alignment between one's thinking, feeling with one's doing. So when that happens, there is integrity for a person, and that integrity gives the humility and the context sensitivity to take appropriate action at appropriate time. So in that way, I broke the wisdom framework into 6 capabilities, and each of these 6 capabilities I will just quickly go through and give examples. The first one is working with authenticity and appropriateness. Thanks to Bill George and Bruce Avalio and many of them, authentic leadership has become extremely important. But what is also interesting is, if you look at Steve Jobs, is Steve Jobs authentic? Is he appropriate, or both? Whenever I look at and ask that question, many people say Steve Jobs was extraordinarily authentic. But pretty much most of the time he was very inappropriate. That is because he had a noble purpose. He wanted to make a dent in the universe. But in that process, he was having a single-minded focus on Are you going to help me to make a dent in the universe? Then you are God. If you can't help me make the dent in the universe, get out of my way. Tim Cook, on the other hand, had been always appropriate. But his authenticity was not very well known till he became the CEO, and only now he is taking steps that are not necessarily what Steve Jobs would have taken. And of course, as soon as the stock of Apple went down, people are questioning, if he were to do exactly what Steve Jobs would have done, it would have been very different. This guy is probably not as smart as Steve Jobs. He doesn't have the charisma as the Steve Jobs, and he doesn't make the decisions in the same ruthlessness that he has. So from that perspective, he's actually making our stock go down. So think about, essentially you may want to look at it is, authenticity and appropriateness are two ends of the same spectrum. It is important for you not to lose your authenticity, but at the same time you need to respect the appropriateness of when to give feedback, what kind of a feedback, how do I create a context in such a way other person will receive your constructive feedback in an appropriate and developmental context so that they can benefit from it. Otherwise they will negate you and they will negate your feedback. So you haven't done anything positive in that respect. So wisdom is first about how do I become balanced, a good balanced person between the two dilemmas. Alan Mulally of Ford demonstrated that authenticity and appropriateness. When there was an what you call opportunity for them to take a loan or take money from the government, he went ahead and took $24 billion loan saying, we would like to control our own destiny instead of taking the handout money from the TARP funds. In some respects, everybody looked at him and said, hey, this is easy money. Why don't you just take it? Why would you take a loan, by even kind of mortgaging some of the Ford signs, Ford logo, they had to mortgage to get that loan. But now they had come out of the what you call situation smelling like a rose because they were able to take some steps that they didn't need to listen to the government, and that allowed them to make the choices which they need to do. I is for intelligent and flexible fortitude. Fortitude, other words, are perseverance. Knowing once you started a project, how long do you want to stay in the project? When do you cut the losses and move on? Especially if you are in an entrepreneurial venture, if you are burning money, you say, oh my God, it is not producing results. When do I stay with it? When do I get out of it? Kiran Majumdar Shah, who started a company called Biocon in India, she is passionate about diabetic therapy. She has been really looking at the holy grail of diabetic therapy called oral insulin, because most of the times if you take insulin through the mouth, it doesn't reach the pancreas because the stomach acids are so strong that they will dissolve it before it reaches it. So she had been working on it for 8 years and spent hundreds of millions. Wow. Recently, when the clinical test again came back negative, their project manager said, don't worry about it, we'll stay with it. Don't worry, you will be the first one who will come up with the oral insulin. She stopped them and said, I'm more committed to find the diabetes therapy. If it is not working, let us cut the losses, drop this and find some other things which will work better for diabetes therapy. And everybody looked at it and said, Kiran, how could you say that? You are the one who has been working on it. She said, you need to know when to hold and when to fold. If you don't know that, then it doesn't matter what you have, you will lose. How do you make that decision? If you have a larger purpose. What is the larger purpose towards which you are staying in the game or getting out of the game? If you don't have a noble purpose, it becomes a lot harder. Wendy Kopp, who created the Teach for America, she created this project while she was an undergrad, and out of that she turned it into a $300 million organization. Teaching is no longer left for people who cannot. Like there is a proverb, those who can take up a job, those who cannot teach. So that she's really changing, because there are 5 times more number of applications than they have opportunities to go teach in the villages. Many Ivy League students are interested in being teachers thanks to the model that she brought about. S is about shifting your purpose towards the perspective towards a noble purpose. For example, Microsoft, we talked about Apple. Another company, which is Microsoft, recently talked about, is Windows 8 already a failure? Balmer says, well, I think we are learning from the customer. We need to make some significant changes to Windows 8. But the key it comes down to is, he seems to let go of everybody who becomes a challenge to Steve Ballmer. They are unable to let go that maybe Windows is not something that works for mobiles and tablets and phones and operating systems and cable. I think till they learn to recognize there are other frameworks that they could use, as long as they keep on focusing on how do we extend the life of Windows, that perspective, if it doesn't shift, there may be very different scenario. Here is an Indian gentleman who was a doctor who had rheumatic arthritis, and he created what is called a Arvind Eye Hospital after he retired from the profession, saying, I'm too young to really retire. And they asked, what do you want to do? He said, well, I want to eliminate needless blindness. He didn't say, I want to eliminate needless blindness from my town, from my city, or from a cataract. He just said, I'd like to see what I can do to eliminate needless blindness. And now it is the largest eye care facility in the world. And they operate the same amount of patients that the entire UK operates at 100 the budget. They use a model. You know what is interesting business model they use? They use McDonald's. They said if McDonald's can serve at affordable cost, reasonable quality food anywhere else in the world, can we provide eye care in the same way anywhere else in the world? So when you have a noble purpose, you serve everybody, you teach your even competitors, and you make a difference no matter what.